I'm Warren Sprouse. I'm the host of the Bible Forum here every Sunday evening from 8 until 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we look at life through a biblical lens. We solve all the world's problems in 2 hours or less. And tonight we're talking about the cascading effect of same-sex marriage. You can go to my website, thebibleforum.net, and you can read the blog. You can watch the videos in the bottom right-hand corner in the little screen. They reflect what we were talking about this evening, this Sunday evening, in smaller segments. They rotate throughout the week. But as you know, the U.S. Supreme Court is looking at marriage in America and same-sex marriage specifically. And one of the issues that came up as they were discussing this on Tuesday of this week was, what are the ramifications down the road if we say this is constitutional, that this is right and good, we can do this. It came down to a definition of marriage. I don't know that they took up that issue of definition of marriage, but I am. If you define marriage as primarily an emotional commitment that two people have or make for each other, you might see yourself accepting this idea of same-sex marriage. But if you see marriage in a broader context, if you see it in terms of the children and in terms of the larger society, you might have a different view. I don't know how the U.S. Supreme Court is going to move on this. My opinion is that they are probably going to say okay. U.S. law is oriented toward family and children. It's one of the reasons that they get after the fundamentalist Mormons. It's why Utah couldn't be a state until the Mormons gave up polygamy. It's about the children. When in Texas they raided this fundamentalist Mormon conclave, they rounded up the hundreds of children that were there and the mothers, and they did blood tests to see who belonged to whom. That's important in a society. If children start marrying too close, their own siblings or cousins or near relatives, there are some serious medical issues that can rise. It doesn't even acknowledge the social, emotional issues that come out of it. And all of that puts a strain on society. And over time, you make jokes about inbreeding, but over time, you get up with a bunch of imbeciles. Not healthy. If you are in the marrying business, someone has to present to you a marriage license. I'm not sure what it is now in every state, but it was that when I did a marriage and I signed off on this with the witnesses and the whole bit, it was my responsibility to file that license with the government. And I had to take it to the Board of Health. And that surprised me. I thought it would be the Bureau of Records or something of that. No, it's the Board of Health. Why? Marriage is a health issue. It's a very important health issue. There's a truism in our world that says if you change the definitions of a word, you change the reality. Are we changing the definition of marriage? And are we prepared to live with the realities that new definition is going to create? On Tuesday, Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito asked, how do you account for the fact that, as far as I'm aware, until the end of the 20th century, there was never a nation or culture that recognized marriage between two people of the same sex? He was talking about the Netherlands. How can we infer from that that those nations and those cultures all thought that there was some rational, practical purpose for defining marriage in that way? Or is it your argument that they were all operating independently based solely on irrational stereotypes and prejudices? That's an illusion to me. That's an illusion perhaps to you. It's the Christian community, the conservative Christian community, that's standing up and saying, this is an abomination, it shouldn't happen. Well, you're just biased. You have an irrational, stereotypical view of this sort of thing. You're prejudiced. You just are a hate monger. You don't want people to be happy. Justice Stephen Breyer noted that marriage understood as the union of a man and a woman has been the law everywhere for thousands of years among people who were not discriminating even against gay people. And he said, now suddenly you want 9 people outside the ballot box to require states that don't want to do it to change what marriage is. The argument was, leave it to the states. At least if the states are the ones doing it, you have a choice. I can move out of my state, and I can go to a state that doesn't do this if it bothers me that much. The justices were asked to consider 2 married couples with a 3-year-old child. One grows up believing that marriage is about keeping that couple bound to that child forever. The other couple believes that marriage is more about their emotional commitment to each other, and if that commitment fades, they may not stay together. That is 2 entirely worldviews. A reasonable voter, which is what we're talking about here, Alito said, could believe that there would be a different outcome if those 2 marriages were influenced by those 2 differing belief systems, because ideas matter. If same-sex marriage becomes the law of the land, the debate would be over with a populace deeply divided. Churches would not be permitted to refuse a same-sex couple. Religious schools might very well lose their nonprofit status. There would be no exceptions once it is a constitutional prescription. If equality is the measure for this law, what other laws need to be changed to effect equality? If the measure is consenting adults, what about 2 men and 2 women? What about siblings? Justice Alito asked. Justice Kennedy said this is why giving states time to settle the question is important. With states, exceptions can be accommodated. With a federal law, it's a one-size-fits-all, and nobody's happy. The concern from the court is creating another culture war, very much like Roe v. Wade. That's not over yet. 60 years, 70 years, how long has this been? The push for same-sex marriage is nothing more than a war against Christianity, which is another way of saying this is a war against God. Dostoevsky once wrote, if there is no God, everything is permitted. It's a truism that drives every understanding of absolute morality, or the standards of absolute morality. That these standards are often best for society never enters into an equation when there is no God. It's just simply, I want what I want, what I want. How about that? The homosexual issue is in that category. And Christians who stand for divine standards of morality are the same ones who don't want to see anybody going to hell. In our twisted corporate logic, that comports with hate. Some of us see hate in the life these people are forcing on children. Have you read the articles? Kids are coming out saying it wasn't happy time living with two moms or two dads. There wasn't the balance. One child said, I just wanted a boy. I just wanted to know what it was like to be held by a man who loved me. They never got that. And the girls, they didn't understand what men were, except through their mother's eyes, which was warped. They'd already come to the conclusion that men were pigs. To never have that balance, to always live with a floating value system, to live with a divorce rate that is double that of traditional couples. How is any of that love if we're talking about children? I fully expect the High Court to make same-sex marriage a constitutional right. To do that even as Hillary is advocating for Christianity to change in order to accept abortion. She wants to change Christianity to embrace abortion. That's how weird this gets. That's how far off the beam this gets. The question becomes, why were there no Greek homosexual marriages? Why were there no Roman homosexual marriages? Why is it left to a so-called Christian nation to inaugurate this? It's not a mistake. It's not an accident. It's very logical if you think about it.